Hey, ladies and gentlemen, and now welcome to the vocabulary lesson. And now we're up to 134 vocabulary lesson. And then now we're going to be talking about limbs and overhead. So now let's start here. An limb is an arm or leg of a person or four-legged animal or bird's wing. Similar: arm, leg, wing, extremity, appendage, protuberance. Protuberance. Next one is projection, member, a large branch of a tree. Similar: branch, buff, a projecting landform such as a spur of a mountain, mountain range, or each of two or more such projections, as in a forked peninsula or archipelago. One of the projecting paired appendages, such as wings of an animal body, used especially for movement and grasping, but sometimes modified into sensory or sexual organs. A leg or arm of a human being. Combat soldiers who had lost limbs. A limb is an arm and your leg, a part of your body. My friend got into a horrible accident and lost a limb, which can be an arm or a leg. She would be able to stretch out her cramped limbs and rest for a few hours. This entire rickety structure was hanging from the limb of an enormous leafy tree. She sat on a limb of the tree and looked down. His refusal to agree left him out on a limb. Although she had to have her leg amputated, she still feels as though she's got a phantom limb. A large primary branch of a tree. An active member or agent. A limb of the law. Extension, branch. A limb of the sea. A mischievous child. Limbless is an adjective. Limby is an adjective. Limbed, limbing, limbs. Transitive verb. Dismember, to cut off the limbs of a felled tree. Limb is the outer edge of the apparent disk of a celestial body. Celestial, body. The expanded portion of an organ or structure, especially the upper spreading portion of a corolla, as of the phlox, phlox, whose lower part consists of a tube of fused petals out on a limb, in an exposed or dangerous position with little chance of retreat. Any of the paired parts, as an arm, wing, or leg of an animal that stick out from the body and are used mostly in moving and grasping. Especially a leg or arm of a human being, a large branch of a tree, limbless. Limb, to cut off the limbs of a felled tree. Limb, an arm or leg of a person or animal. The accident victims mostly had injuries to their lower limbs, legs, an artificial limb, a leg or arm of a human being. The combat soldiers had lost limbs from their service in Iraq. More examples: Amputation of the limb is really a last resort. Although she had to have her leg amputated, she still feels as though she's got a phantom limb. He risked life and limb to get the cat down from the tree. If it continues to bleed, you may have to apply a tourniquet to the limb. It is a vestigial limb. Vestigial. Don't know how to say that. Limbs, an arm or leg of a person. We need our limbs. Limb is a part of your body. It's your arms, your legs, and those are your limbs. Limb is a part of your body. Limb is a part of your body. It's your arms, your legs, and those are your limbs. My limbs were sore from playing basketball against Napper for losing and winning. A limb is a body part such as arms and legs, and also trees has limbs. Limb is in arms and your legs. Those are your limbs. The limb is the furthest branches of the tree. I lost my limb, which can be an arm or a leg, and also a tree branch, an arm of a tree. Just like Groot. Groot is the tree person, as from the Guardians of the Galaxy. So the Groot will lose his limb, like his arm. That's what it is, folks. So now we're going to be talking about overhead. Overhead is in business. Overhead or overhead expense refers to an ongoing expense of operating a business. Overheads are the expenditure which cannot be conveniently traced to or identified with any particular revenue unit, unlike operating expenses such as raw material and labor. What is overhead? Ongoing business expenses that support your business but don't generate revenue. Overhead. Ongoing business expenses that cannot be directly attributed to a specific activity. She turned on the overhead light and looked around the little room. Now there were only the stars overhead. They bear a fixed share of overheads, but they do not sustain growth, expansion, risk-taking, and investment. Above the level of the head in the sky, a helicopter buzzed overhead. And overhead above the level of the head in the sky, a helicopter buzzed overhead. Similar, above, up above, high up in the sky, on high, above, over one's head, in flight, aloft, situated above the level of the head. The sun was directly overhead. Similar, like aerial, aerial, A-E-R-I-A-L. Elevated, raised, suspended, projecting, overhanging, opposite, underground, of a driving mechanism above the object driven, an overhead cam for cylinder engine, an overhead cost or expense. Research conducted in space requires more overhead. Similar, running costs, operating costs, fixed costs, budget items, costs, expenses, on costs, Opposite, variable cost, cost of sales, a transparency designed for use with an overhead projector, software for producing slides, charts, and overheads, operating, lying, or coming from above. Having the driving part above the part driven. Valves. No. Values operated by an overhead camshaft of or relating to overhead. Overhead costs. Overheads is business. Overheads. Business costs that are related to the day-to-day running of the business. The overhead of a business is its regular and essential expenses such as salaries, rent, electricity, and telephone bills. Private insurers spend 27 cents of every dollar on overhead. Overhead above the level of the head. A helicopter buzzed overhead. My business has a large overhead. It's all financial overhead, which means large operating cost. Overhead is above the level of the head in the sky. It's an object situated above the level of the head. The sun is directly overhead. And also, it's a business. It's a business lingo for an overhead. It's different. I held his container overhead. Like when you put something over your head. See, I put in this card over my head. Your cost to running a business is your overhead. It's called an overhead. Your cost to running a business is your overhead. It's called an overhead. The plane is overhead. All right, folks, that's it. The lesson is over. Hope you guys enjoyed the lesson.